Hello everyone, and welcome back to our quiet corner of history where the dust of ages settles into soft whispers. Tonight we're embarking on a journey far, far back in time to an era that truly shaped what it means to be human, the Paleolithic. It was a world defined by a direct, unyielding relationship with nature approximately 25,000 years ago, where every breath you took, every skill you honed was a testament to raw adaptability. Allow your mind to softly drift as we journey back to a time when societies were structured in small, highly interdependent bands, where cooperation wasn't just a preference, but the fundamental bedrock of your very survival. These groups navigated a landscape rich in both sustenance and peril, where the rhythms of nature dictated every aspect of your life, from the daily quest for food to the enduring struggle against harsh weather and illness. Tonight you're not just observing, you're living it, experiencing the stark macro-reality of that time, where daily existence presented a unique tapestry of routines, discomforts, and profound connections that shaped your personal reality from the moment you awoke in your primordial shelter. Emerging from the depths of sleep in the Paleolithic era, each new day presented you with a visceral, immediate engagement with the tangible and often profoundly uncomfortable realities of life. You'd open your eyes not to the gentle hum of modern conveniences, but to a pervasive, bone-deep, teeth-chattering cold that made your muscles clench almost instinctively, even within the insulating embrace of your cave. Imagine it a persistent chill seeping up through the raw stone floor, a cold that your calloused feet, having known nothing else since birth, nevertheless registered with an ache that resonated deep within your bones. Good luck finding central heating or thermal underwear in this century. This was simply the baseline, a constant low-frequency hum of discomfort. Your rest, such as it was, had been found on rudimentary sleeping mats, scratchy constructions woven from sedge grass and rushes. Every shift, every stretch in the night would have been accompanied by a soft rustling like nature's most uncomfortable cereal, a constant auditory reminder of your primal bedding. Over these mats, animal skins, most likely deer or elk, painstakingly prepared and worked until they were softish, rather than truly soft, offered a relative warmth, a precious layer against the omnipresent cold that attempted to penetrate your very being. You'd clutch them tighter in the darkest hours, feeling the coarse texture against your skin, a comfort born of necessity and laborious preparation. It wasn't luxury, but it was something. The air you breathed was a complex, potent blend of wood smoke from the central fire, the musty, earthy scent of the cave walls, the sharp, undeniable aroma of unwashed human bodies, and the lingering funk of animal fat. This fat, you knew, wasn't just for cooking. It was a precious resource used for waterproofing skins for medicine, and for adding a crucial layer of insulation against the elements. The cave itself breathed around you, a living entity, echoing with the soft, rhythmic snoring of 20-plus inhabitants, the occasional drip of water from the ceiling, and the subtle, almost imperceptible shifts of the earth itself. It was a symphony of raw existence, a constant reminder of your intimate connection to both your band and the ancient world. You'd probably get used to it, or you'd freeze. Life you understood unfolded in incredibly close proximity. A typical band, perhaps around 23 people, would cluster together. Family groups, your mate, your children, your parents, your siblings, your cousins, would be intimately gathered around the central fire pit. Privacy in the modern sense was a concept yet to be imagined. Your world was one of shared space, shared warmth, shared sense, and shared breath. There were no separate rooms, no quiet corners for solitary reflection. Every movement, every sound, every whisper was part of the collective experience. This communal closeness, though sometimes challenging, was also your greatest strength, your only true security against the vast, indifferent wilderness outside. You learn to ignore a lot, or you learn to love the constant company. The fire pit, the very hearth and heart of your home, was undeniably the most important element in the cave's darkness. It was a vital pulsing heart, a source of warmth that battled the bone-deep chill, a beacon of light that pushed back the oppressive darkness and a crucial line of protection against the predators that roamed outside. This fire wasn't just a convenience. It was meticulously nurtured, never allowed to die completely. Embers carefully kept alive overnight were coaxed from specific woods, like oak, birch and ash, each chosen for its unique burn characteristics and the distinct aroma it lent to the cave air. You knew the subtle art of fire, how to feed it, how to keep it a low, steady glow through the long night, a testament to countless generations of hard-won knowledge. And you knew that the fire was the difference between human and, well, everything else. Your morning routine, a timeless ritual connecting you to every ancestor who ever shivered through a Paleolithic night, always began with the demanding task of rekindling that vital fire. It wasn't a solitary chore. This was a collaborative effort, a shared responsibility that knit your small band together even before the sun dared to touch the cave mouth. You'd work with others arranging thin, dry kindling, delicate birch bark, fine twigs that crackled with anticipation over the pulsing embers that had been so carefully kept alive. Then leaning in close, you'd blow gently a slow, steady breath, coaxing the red glow back to life. The air around you would instantly fill with the distinct comforting scent of smoke, hot stone and ash. As you watched, mesmerized, the first dancing, crackling flames would emerge, pushing back the persistent darkness, casting flickering shadows across the rough cave walls, and most importantly, warming your expectant, often numb hands. This wasn't just about making a fire. It was about bringing life back to the heart of your world, a daily resurrection. You were essentially a fire priest every morning. Each awakening, even after the warmth of the fire began to spread, was accompanied by the quiet protest of a body forged by a lifetime of physical exertion and sleeping on the unyielding ground. You'd feel your hips pop with a dull, resonant thud, your neck click, as you slowly turned your head and your feet tough as cured leather. From endless scrambling over rocks and through rough terrain would still ache with a deep, familiar throb. This constant physical discomfort wasn't an anomaly. It was a baseline reality, a persistent hum beneath the surface of your awareness. It was a deep-seated fatigue, a quiet weariness that hinted at the relentless, demanding pace of survival. The kind of discomfort that made you wonder if restful sleep was just a story the elders told to children. Your body, you understood, was a tool, and like any well-used tool, it bore the marks of its tireless service, often complaining loudly. As the dim, hesitant light finally filtered from the cave mouth, a gentle grey seeping in from the world outside the indistinct shapes around the central fire began to clarify. The soft sounds of other people stirring would fill the space, a jaw-cracking yawn that echoed faintly the tender murmur of a baby seeking comfort, a stretching groan from an elder whose bones protested even more loudly than yours. These familiar sounds mark the collective transition from the quiet, vulnerable dark of night to the renewed efforts required for a new day. You were never alone in this awakening. It was a shared experience, a quiet affirmation of the band's continued existence. Everyone else was also stiff and a bit grumbly, which you realised was a kind of comfort in itself. And with that awakening came the day's fundamental high-stakes question, one that overshadowed all others. What are we going to eat and how are we going to get it? Forget the modern world's anxieties about mortgages, career paths or quarterly reports. Your entire economic reality, your very existence hinged on the immediate visceral pressure of daily food acquisition. Every waking thought, every planned action was shaped by this unrelenting quest for sustenance. There was no pantry filled with pre-packaged goods, no corner store, no safety net other than the collective skill and luck of your band. Your to-do list was brutally simple. Breakfast, when it happened, was a pragmatic, often deeply satisfying affair. If yesterday's hunt had been successful, you'd enjoy leftover meat spitted on sharpened sticks and warmed over the flames. A small miracle on a cold morning, turning tough, cool protein into something more palatable. The smell of the heating meat mingling with the perennial wood smoke would elicit an empty, anticipatory rumble in your stomach, a primal response to the promise of nourishment. This would be paired with previously gathered nuts, perhaps hazelnuts, or acorns carefully processed to remove their bitterness. It was simple, unadorned, but every bite felt earned, every calorie precious. It was enough to quiet the immediate gnawing hunger, preparing you for the challenging day ahead, where the quest for more food would undoubtedly dominate your thoughts. Your coffee, for the record, was just cold stream water. The relentless pursuit of food in your Paleolithic world presented a constant dichotomy, the reliability of gathering versus the peril of hunting. Gathering, primarily the domain of women and children, might seem less dramatic than hunting a mammoth, but it demanded an incredible knowledge that you had accumulated since childhood. You knew hundreds of plants, identifying their species with a glance, understanding their seasonal availability, discerning which parts were edible, and critically distinguishing them from the hundreds of poisonous lookalikes. You learned the intricate processing methods required for many plants, like leaching bitter tannins from acorns or preparing certain roots. It was an encyclopedic, constantly updated mental database, a vast botanical library carried entirely in your mind. This method of sustenance, while laborious and requiring immense precision, was generally more reliable, providing a steady, if often modest, stream of calories. Think of it as your most important and least thrilling degree. Hunting big game, however, was a different beast entirely. Wielding stone-tipped spears and crude wooden clubs, you and the other hunters faced immense danger. The thrill of the chase, the rush of adrenaline as you stalked a deer or an ancient bison was undeniable, but so was the stark reality of failure. Often you returned to the cave empty-handed, your muscles aching, your stomach hollow, and your spirits dampened. Yet a successful hunt offered high-value protein fats and a sense of collective triumph that few modern experiences could rival. It was a thrilling, essential challenge, a testament to courage, strategy, and collective strength, but one fraught with life-or-death risks. The balance between these two methods defined your survival, a constant dance between dependable drudgery and high-stakes gambling. Among the various food sources, the rare discovery of wild honey was akin to winning the lottery. Imagine the concentrated burst of pure, complex sweetness and energy, a taste that instantly electrified your senses, a stark contrast to the often savoury or earthy flavours of your daily diet. Harvesting it, however, was a perilous endeavour. It demanded a skilled climber, someone like Toma, who had probably been scaling trees since he was old enough to walk a literal Paleolithic Spider-Man. You'd watch him holding your breath as he ascended high into an old oak, using smoke to calm the aggressive bees. The inherent risk of dangerous stings, even anaphylactic shock, was a real and present danger, a risk gladly taken for such a precious reward. It was a moment of collective anxiety, and then with a safe descent a burst of joyous relief, as if a small golden god had smiled upon you. Tasting wild honey was an experience like nothing in the modern world. As the golden, viscous liquid touched your tongue, an explosion of sweetness, complex and floral, would wash over you. It wasn't just sugar, it was the distilled essence of 1,000 blossoms, a direct connection to the vibrant life of the forest. This intensely sweet sensation provided an immediate rush of natural energy, a warmth spreading through your body. You'd savour this treasure slowly, perhaps even closing your eyes, to fully immerse yourself in the luxurious taste, feeling a deep, almost primal satisfaction. This precious find, carefully wrapped in leaves or stored in a small bark container, would be shared among the band, a taste of pure luxury that transcended mere sustenance. It was your dessert, your energy drink, and your rare sweet joy all in one. Midday sustenance often occurred beside clear cold streams, their waters offering a mineral purity untouched by human intervention. You'd cup your hands, scooping up the icy liquid, feeling it cleanse your palate and hydrate your body, a refreshing pause in the day's toil. Lunch consisted of gathered nuts, perhaps some tart berries, any leftover meat from the morning, and if you were fortunate, precious tastes of that wild honey. This food, challenging by modern standards of convenience and variety, was nevertheless deeply satisfying. Every bite you knew was earned through immense skill, hard work, and an intimate understanding of your environment. There was no casual consumption. Every morsel was a product of direct, often strenuous effort. You didn't scroll through menus, you scanned the forest floor. Beyond the direct roasting of meat over the fire, the ingenuity of your ancestors led to surprisingly sophisticated culinary methods, such as the Stone Age oven. This wasn't just about cooking, it was a testament to human intelligence, a transformation of basic elements into varied tender culinary experiences. And for the amount of effort, you probably deserved a Michelin star if anyone knew what that was. Imagine the laborious process you and your band would heat stones in a roaring fire until they glowed red, radiating intense heat. Then, with long wooden poles or antlers, these searingly hot stones would be carefully transferred to a pit dug in the earth, already lined with fresh, fragrant leaves, perhaps maple or wild fig, chosen not just for their availability but also for the subtle flavour they might impart. Next meat, a fresh kill or perhaps carefully preserved portions, would be wrapped in more leaves, creating a protective, flavourful parcel. This bundle would then be placed on top of the hot stones and the entire pit sealed with a layer of dirt, trapping the heat and steam within. The magic of this earth oven was in its slow, even cooking. Without direct flame, the meat would steam to an incredibly tender perfection, infused with earthy and smoky notes without any risk of burning. It was a method that required patience and precise knowledge of heat transfer, transforming a simple piece of game into a succulent, deeply satisfying meal, showcasing the sophisticated resourcefulness of your people. You'd gather round the pit as it was uncovered, the steam carrying tantalizing aromas, a communal anticipation building as the dirt was carefully brushed away, revealing the perfectly cooked meal. It was your slow cooker thousands of years before the invention of electricity. A successful hunt was always a cause for celebration, a feast, that temporarily eased the constant pressure of hunger, but it was also a call to meticulous preservation. In your world, every calorie, every fibre, every bone was precious. Leftover raw meat carefully sliced would be dried into jerky by the fire's steady heat, and smoke transforming perishable protein into a durable, storable food source. Fat rendered from the animal's tissues was another invaluable commodity used for waterproofing skins as a base for rudimentary medicines and crucially for food preservation. It could be stored in bladders or rough containers, providing a concentrated energy source for leaner times. You wasted nothing because wasting meant hardship or worse. The ethic of no waste was not just a practice, it was a fundamental principle deeply ingrained in your culture. Every single part of the animal was utilised with profound respect. Bones were meticulously cracked open for their rich, nutritious marrow, a concentrated source of fats and minerals. The hide, after a laborious tanning and working process, became leather for clothing, shelter and cordage. Sinew, strong and flexible, was carefully extracted and dried, serving as thread for sewing and binding. Antlers and bones were carved and shaped into an array of essential tools: spear points, awls, scraping tools, fishing hooks. Even the hooves could find a purpose, perhaps for glue or decorative elements. This extreme resourcefulness embodied an absolute commitment to avoiding waste, a profound respect for the life that had been taken, and an acute understanding of the fragile line between abundance and scarcity. Your ancestors would be appalled by modern landfills. When it came to personal care and hygiene, the pervasive presence of unwashed human bodies mingling with the other cave aromas, the smoke, the earth, the animal fat, was simply a natural part of communal existence. It reflected a practical approach to hygiene, one dictated by harsh realities, rather than elaborate ritual or aesthetic preference. Your daily hygiene was rudimentary at best, limited to cold washes in streams or with fetched water. There were no soaps, no perfumes, no hot baths. The focus was on functional cleanliness necessary for survival, washing off blood after a hunt, wiping away grime that might chafe, or rinsing off the dust of a long-gathering expedition. This was cleanliness for purpose, not for vanity. You weren't clean, but you were clean enough. This practical approach to your own body stood in stark contrast to the constant meticulous maintenance you dedicated to your tools and clothing. These weren't mere possessions, they were extensions of your will to survive. A dull knife meant a missed opportunity, or worse, a dangerous struggle. A poorly maintained hide meant exposure to the elements, risking illness or frostbite. Your survival quite literally hinged on the keen edges of your tools and the integrity of your garments. Thus, your personal presentation, in a very real sense, was deeply intertwined with the functionality of your gear. Your grooming was for the benefit of your spear, not your face. Your clothing, for instance, was purely functional, crafted from carefully prepared and tailored deer hide. You'd wear leggings and tunics designed for maximum warmth and ease of movement through rough terrain. Your soft leather boots were often stuffed with insulating grass, a vital defence against the cold and damp. In harsher weather, you'd don heavier skin cloaks, perhaps from bison or bear, offering superior protection. Every garment was a masterpiece of necessity, sewn with strong sinew thread, and often treated with animal fat to enhance its water resistance. There were no fashion trends to follow, no elaborate ornamentation beyond what could be quickly added or gleaned from nature. Each piece of clothing was designed for a specific purpose: movement, warmth, protection from the elements, and defence against thorns or sharp rocks. You wore what kept you alive, which you'd admit was far more practical than whatever was coming next in fashion history. In the Paleolithic world, every individual was an incredibly skilled expert in their environment, a living compendium of vital knowledge. These weren't hobbies or optional talents. These were essential capabilities required just to not die. You knew hundreds of plants, their uses and their seasons. You could track by the tiniest, almost invisible signs: a broken twig, a disturbed pebble, a faint scent on the wind. You could make fire from scratch, a painstaking process that you'd mastered through countless repetitions. You knew the subtle art of knapping stone tools, striking them at just the right angle, with precise force to create edges sharper than modern steel. And you possessed an innate, profound ability to read the weather, interpreting dozens of subtle environmental cues that spoke volumes to your experienced eye. This lifelong education, absorbed through observation and constant practice, was your true wealth, your ultimate defense against a hostile world. You were a walking, breathing survival guide. Beyond the initial creation of fire, its continuous maintenance was a vital, rotating responsibility, one of the most important tasks of the band. Someone was always charged with keeping the embers alive, ensuring the precious glow didn't vanish, especially overnight. This required an intimate understanding of fuel. You learned to add precisely chosen wood, not too much to waste it, not too little to let it die. You understood the unique burn characteristics of different wood types, knowing which provided long-lasting heat, which produced a bright, clean flame for light, and which created the perfect coals for cooking. This wasn't just a chore. It was a constant vigil, a partnership with the element that anchored your existence. It was the original "don't let the fire go out" rule with far higher stakes. Hunting parties, often led by experienced individuals like Jorik, embarked on perilous journeys that demanded immense patience and physical endurance. You'd track game, perhaps a herd of red deer, for hours, following barely visible signs through dense forests. Every fallen leaf, every disturbed patch of moss, every faint scent became a clue. This wasn't a sprint. It was a slow, deliberate chess match against nature. It required a lifetime of environmental knowledge to strategically intercept and bring down prey with your stone-tipped spears. You learned to anticipate, to read the land, to understand the subtle shifts in animal behaviour. Success was never guaranteed, and the physical toll was immense, but the potential reward was the survival of your entire band. This was not merely work. It was a fundamental dance with life and death where every move was critical. Just as crucial as the hunt were the gathering expeditions often undertaken by women, children and elders, moving with a practiced silence through the forests. These were not casual strolls. You would meticulously scour the landscape, your eyes trained to spot edible nuts, roots, berries, mushrooms and medicinal plants. This required a staggering level of knowledge, not just identification, but understanding seasonality, recognizing preferred habitats, and knowing the complex processing methods to distinguish safe from deadly. One wrong choice, one misidentified leaf could mean severe illness or worse. It was a slow, deliberate form of environmental harvesting, a profound conversation with the land, extracting its bounty while respecting its delicate balance. The success of the gathering party was often the more consistent, dependable source of calories for the band, a quiet, steady rhythm underpinning the more dramatic hunts. Your grocery store was simply the entire natural world, and you were the ultimate expert shopper. The rhythm of Paleolithic life also included the chip, chip, chip of stone on stone, a sound as familiar and constant as the wind through the trees. Stone tools, the very bedrock of your technology, dulled with use demanding constant attention. Knapping the precise art and science of shaping stone tools was a discipline passed down through generations. It involved striking the stone at just the right angle with exact force, using a hammer stone or antler billet to detach flakes and create razor-sharp edges. You learned to read the stone, to understand its internal structure, to anticipate its fracture patterns. This wasn't just a craft. It was a complex skill, a performance of precision and accumulated knowledge. The rhythmic chip, chip, chip was indeed the comfortable, familiar sound, the soundtrack of Paleolithic life. A constant reminder that survival was an active, ongoing creation. It was the sound of progress, one sharp edge at a time. Brune, a skilled elder, often taught the children the essential skill of making strong rope from plant fibres. This seemingly simple act was a fundamental technology vital for countless tasks. Imagine the laborious process. Plant fibres, perhaps from nettles or milkweed, would be beaten, softened, and then meticulously twisted and plied together, strand by painstaking strand, to create a durable cordage. This rope was essential for binding spear points to shafts, creating snares for small game, securing loads of gathered food, and countless other everyday needs. It was a labour-intensive process requiring considerable practice and fine motor skills to master a tangible lesson in patience and the power of human ingenuity. Learning this, you understood, was learning independence, a critical step towards becoming a fully contributing member of the band. Your future self would thank your childhood hands. The day's rhythmic pace often began with the urgent quest for food, a high-stakes scramble against time and hunger. But as the morning progressed, as food was found or hunting parties departed, the urgency would gradually settle. Your movements would become more deliberate, flowing into what felt like the meditation of long-distance walking through familiar territory. Your eyes, trained since childhood, would automatically scan the landscape, not just for specific resources, but for utility, for danger, for subtle changes in the environment. Every rustle of leaves, every shadow, every scent was processed in unconscious, constant vigilance. The day typically culminated in a pleasant, deeply satisfying fatigue, the kind that comes from physical work directly tied to your survival. It wasn't the weary exhaustion of modern labour. It was a profound tiredness that spoke of purpose fulfilled, of calories earned, of another day met and conquered. And perhaps, just perhaps, you were too tired to worry. Evenings, though calmer than the daylight hours, remained productive. Around the flickering fire, the quiet industry of preparation continued. Yorick, with practiced hands, might carve a complex spear thrower from antler, a demonstration of advanced technology honed over millennia. This wasn't just a tool. It was a sophisticated lever enhancing the force and range of a thrown spear, a technological marvel in its time. Kessa perhaps would rhythmically grind wild grass seeds into coarse flour between two stones, a labour-intensive process that unlocked vital nutrition from otherwise indigestible seeds. And the women of the band would mend leather garments with bone needles, ensuring the longevity of their labour-intensive clothing, each stitch a commitment to future warmth and protection. These weren't optional pastimes. They were crucial nighttime contributions ensuring the band's continued resilience, a quiet hum of purposeful work under the watchful stars. Childhood in the Paleolithic was a constant hands-on apprenticeship devoid of formal classrooms or textbooks. From the moment they could walk, children were seamlessly integrated into adult activities, learning primarily through constant observation and gradual participation. You wouldn't be sat down and lectured. Instead, you'd watch your elders mimic their movements and slowly, cautiously be allowed to help. Toddlers would mimic fire feeding with small sticks. Older children would assist in organising sleeping mats or check water containers for the camp. Every action you witnessed, every task you participated in was a direct lesson in survival. There was no separation between play and learning. All of life was a continuous immersive educational experience, an organic passing down of the cumulative wisdom of your ancestors. Your playground was the wild and your teachers were everyone. The older generations acted as living textbooks, their knowledge passed down directly through active instruction and demonstration. Denny, an older woman with hands gnarled from years of work, would share her vast knowledge of medicinal plants. You'd watch intently as she demonstrated the careful preparation of willowbark tea, explaining its uses for pain and fever, or pointed out specific herbs for childbirth, passing on generations of startlingly sophisticated empirical medicine. Brune, the informal leader, might patiently guide a group of children in cordage, emphasizing the practical techniques that would be refined over years of practice. These weren't abstract lessons. They were concrete life-saving skills drilled through patient repetition and immediate relevance. The forest was your classroom, and your elders, your most vital instructors. Your diploma was simply being alive. Mothers too epitomized this blend of teaching and living, often multitasking with an efficiency born of necessity. You'd see a mother nursing a baby, perhaps gently swaying to soothe her infant, while simultaneously checking the sharpness of her digging stick or preparing gathered roots. This wasn't a choice. It was the reality of ancient maternal responsibilities, a constant balancing act between nurturing the next generation and contributing to the band's immediate survival. Older children, particularly girls, learned critical household management, plant processing techniques, and medicinal knowledge directly from the elder women. These were not just women's tasks. They were crucial components of the band's well-being, preparing them for future roles that were just as vital as hunting. Every mother was a survival expert and a living textbook all at once. Protecting the next generation was a paramount unspoken law. The sight of sleeping children always brings a sense of satisfaction to the adults, a profound, almost spiritual fulfillment. It underscored the community's immense collective investment in their survival, in the continuity of the band. Children received choice portions of food, especially the precious wild honey, a testament to their value and the collective effort to nurture them. They were the future, the living embodiment of the band's hopes and continuation, and every adult understood their role in safeguarding this most vulnerable and vital resource. Your survival was not for yourself alone. It was for those yet to fully contribute, for the little ones who would one day carry the fire. Oral tradition served as the primary form of pedagogy, the foundation of your entire educational system. Elders like old Senna, with her quiet wisdom, and eyes that held the echoes of countless seasons, were the living libraries of your people. Her tales such as The Great Winter were far more than mere entertainment. As you listened around the flickering fire, her narratives subtly transmitted practical survival information, lessons in resource management strategies for preparation against hard times and the importance of resilience, all woven into engaging stories. These narratives forged a deep, undeniable connection to your past, to the triumphs and struggles of those who came before you, ensuring that their hard-won wisdom would never be lost. It was history entertainment and a survival guide all rolled into one comforting voice. The entire educational system, indeed the very fabric of your culture, relied entirely on human memory and hard-won experience. There were no books, no scrolls, no external storage devices beyond the marks on the cave walls that whispered of ages past. Paleolithic people like you possessed extraordinary memories for survival-critical details, the precise seasonal locations of hundreds of food sources, the subtle behaviours of different animals, the complex properties of countless plants, and the intricate web of social relationships within and beyond your band. This profound capacity for recall was not merely a convenience, it was a skill shaped by absolute necessity, honed over countless generations, a literal matter of life and death. Your mind was your library, your archive, and your guide, a supercomputer of survival facts. Now let's step back for a moment and consider the foundational realities and overarching structure that defined your Paleolithic world. The direct daily realities of your life were inextricably linked to macro-level conditions that established an immutable framework for existence. You were not an isolated individual charting your own course. Your very being was part of a larger interconnected whole. This structure, though informal by modern standards, was as rigid and demanding as any feudal system, yet profoundly different in its emphasis. The band or extended family group was the immutable social unit, the absolute centre of your universe. Whether it was the estimated 23 people of your immediate group, or perhaps a slightly larger or smaller cluster, this was your sole source of identity, security, and survival. There was no concept of a nation, a city, or even a village beyond the temporary gathering of several bands. Your individual existence was entirely subsumed within the collective, where cooperation was not just a virtue, but the highest law, the fundamental operating principle. You were a part of the band, and the band was your everything. Your reputation, your safety, your future, all were inextricably tied to this small interdependent group. There was no going solo in this era. That was just a slower way to die. Within this band, authority was informal, fluid, and refreshingly earned. There were no kings or queens by birthright, no inherited titles. Instead, respect and influence were granted through demonstrated skill, profound experience, and undeniable wisdom. Individuals like Brune, your informal leader, didn't rule by decree, but by proven ability to guide the band toward successful hunts and safe decisions. Carla the Tracker commanded attention when discussing animal movements, because her skill literally meant the difference between a full belly and gnawing hunger. Kessa the Plant Identifier was invaluable, her knowledge protecting you from poisoning. Toma the Climber was revered for his daring exploits for honey. Rana the Cook transformed raw ingredients into nourishing meals. Jorik the Hunter brought down game. And old Senna the Elder was a living library, a healer, and a storyteller, her wisdom paramount. Each of these individuals held influence not because of status, but because of their vital, tangible contributions to the group's survival. It was a meritocracy of the most primal kind, where your resume was simply your ability to keep everyone alive. Every member's role was intrinsically tied to the collective well-being. The modern concept of leisure simply didn't exist in the way you understand it today. Your idea of downtime was probably just being unconscious, and even then your dreams were likely still about tracking dinner. Every action, from gathering berries to napping a stone tool, directly impacted the group's ability to eat, stay warm, and survive another day. This fostered an intense, undeniable sense of mutual reliance. You understood fundamentally that if one person failed in their role, the entire group felt the ripple effect. If the water carrier was careless, everyone might go thirsty. If a hunter was reckless, a crucial food source could be lost. This wasn't about individual achievement in a competitive sense. It was about collective success, a shared journey where every step mattered. The reverence for elders like old Senna was not merely a matter of politeness. It was a deep, functional respect born of necessity. These individuals were living libraries, repositories of accumulated knowledge, hard-won experience and deep memory. In a world without written records, their counsel and teachings were vital for the younger generations. You looked to old Senna not just for stories, but for guidance on the best places to find certain medicinal plants, for insights into particularly harsh winters of the past, or for interpretations of subtle environmental signs. This was a functional gerontocracy where wisdom born of surviving countless seasons was paramount. Her words carried weight, her presence a comforting anchor to the past and a guide for the future. You consulted them not out of deference, but because their knowledge kept you alive. Your social structure was built upon profound mutual dependence. This wasn't a philosophical ideal, it was the harsh reality of your daily existence. The success of a hunt, the efficiency of a gathering expedition, the effectiveness of a newly crafted tool, all of these directly translated into the well-being of every single member of the band. If the hunters brought back a large kill, everyone ate. If the gatherers found a rich patch of berries, everyone benefited. This deeply embedded mutual reliance fostered incredibly strong social bonds and minimized stratification. There was little room for hierarchy beyond functional roles because everyone's survival was intricately interwoven with everyone else's efforts. Your life literally depended on the person next to you, which you'd admit was an incredibly strong bonding agent. A core tenet of your social structure, perhaps one of the most heartwarming, was the profound protection of the most vulnerable infants, young children, and the elderly. They were positioned closest to the communal fire, not just for warmth, but for safety, shielded from the biting cold and potential dangers that lurked even within the cave. They received special consideration like choice portions of food, and for pregnant mothers extra nutrition. This wasn't charity. It was a pragmatic, deeply ingrained communal investment in the future. The survival of the children ensured the continuity of the band, and the care of the elders ensured the continuity of knowledge. It was a clear demonstration of a profound collective commitment to the lineage, a recognition that the strength of the chain was only as strong as its weakest link. Your Paleolithic health insurance was simply the goodwill of everyone else. Crucial daily decisions, those that dictated your very survival, such as hunting and gathering roots or strategies for dealing with an unexpected blizzard, were not made by a single leader issuing commands. Instead, they were forged through casual collaborative conversation around the fire. You'd sit there listening intently as experienced members offered their observations. The elk moved south after the last snow, Jorik might say. The berries on the northern slope are still green, Kessa would add. Through this collective wisdom, a consensus would emerge, a path forward that everyone had implicitly agreed upon. This ensured broad buy-in, fostered trust, and optimized outcomes in life or death situations. It was governance by lived experience tested daily against the unforgiving anvil of nature. It was democracy with higher stakes than any modern election. Your Paleolithic economy was entirely subsistence-based, utterly driven by the immediate daily need to acquire food, water, and shelter. The concepts that burden modern minds, mortgages or taxes, rent or interest rates, were non-existent. Wealth was measured in successful hunts, in plentiful gathering yields, and in the profound security of a full belly, if only for the day. There was no accumulation for its own sake, no abstract notions of capital or investment beyond what directly sustained life. Your entire economic framework was a simple, brutal equation: effort equals survival. You lived moment to moment, season to season, with a clarity of purpose that is almost unimaginable in the complexity of the modern world. Your budget was simply not dying today. While not a currency in the modern sense, high-value, storable caloric staples functioned as a form of tangible wealth and security in your Paleolithic world. Imagine the feeling of bringing back a successful large game hunt. The meat, rich in protein and fat, could be consumed fresh or crucially preserved. Precious wild honey, that rare burst of pure sweetness, could be carefully stored. Nutrient-dense beech nuts gathered in abundance during their season provided vital calories. These resources, once acquired, weren't just for immediate consumption. They could be preserved and strategically shared, extending the benefits of successful days into leaner times. This was your version of a savings account, a buffer against the inevitable hardships, a silent promise of future sustenance. It represented foresight and a profound understanding of nature's cyclical bounty and scarcity. Your retirement plan was a well-stocked cache of jerky. The ethic of no waste, as you've seen, extended deeply into your economic principles. Every single part of a hunted animal was meticulously utilized. The meat, of course, was paramount for consumption and preservation. Hides were painstakingly processed into leather for clothing and shelter. Sinew, strong and flexible, became thread for sewing and binding. Bones and antlers were transformed into tools, weapons, and even decorative items, while the marrow within provided rich essential fats. Even less obvious parts, like hooves, might find a purpose, perhaps boiled down for glue. This extreme resourcefulness embodied an absolute commitment to avoiding waste, a profound respect for the life that had been taken, and an acute understanding of the fragile line between abundance and scarcity. Your ancestors would be appalled by modern landfills and probably by your avocado toast. Your survival was dictated by the unforgiving rhythms of the seasons. You possessed a deep encyclopedic knowledge of when and where to find specific resources throughout the year. Spring meant certain greens and early berries. Summer, the bounty of mature fruits and roots. Autumn, the crucial time for nuts and large game, and winter, the long lean months of scarcity. Limited but vital storage efforts were always made jerky, hung by the fire rendered fat, carefully packed stored nuts and honey tucked away in hidden caches. These were not just provisions. They were a strategic defense against the leaner months of winter, a proactive measure against famine. You learned to read the subtle signs of nature, to anticipate its generosity and its ruthlessness, and to plan accordingly, knowing that your foresight was your shield. Your weather app was the entire sky. The creation and continuous maintenance of essential tools represented a significant capital investment. Your stone knives, digging sticks, spear throwers, and grinding stones were not merely implements. They were critical assets directly enabling your food acquisition and processing. Each tool represented hours of skilled labor, rare raw materials, and generations of accumulated knowledge. To lose or neglect a tool was to diminish the band's collective capacity to survive. You understood the value of a perfectly knapped blade, the balance of a well-crafted spear thrower, the efficiency of a sturdy digging stick. These tools were your technology, your means of manipulating the world, and their upkeep was a constant vital economic activity, an investment in your daily bread. Your workshop was the cave floor, and the stakes were your next meal. Perhaps the most valuable wealth of the band was its vast accumulated knowledge. Hundreds of pieces of information about plants, animals, weather patterns, and technology. This knowledge, transmitted through generations of trial and error and careful observation, was an intangible asset, yet utterly irreplaceable. It was the collective wisdom of your ancestors, a living library of survival strategies. Skilled individuals and elders, those who embodied this knowledge, were therefore the most valuable resources. Their expertise in tracking plant identification, healing and tool making was the ultimate form of currency, the true engine of your economy. Their minds held the keys to your continued existence, far more precious than any gold. Resources obtained through collective effort, particularly high-value items like a successful large game hunt or a rare honey find, were not individually owned. Instead, they were shared among the entire band. This communal distribution ensured that everyone was fed with special consideration given to the vulnerable, the young, the old, the infirm. It was a deeply egalitarian approach within the group, an economic system rooted in immediate need and mutual support rather than individual accumulation. You wouldn't hoard food. It was understood that today's bounty was to be shared, because tomorrow you might be the one in need. This act of sharing wasn't just generosity. It was the fundamental social contract, the very glue that held your band together in the face of constant external threats. Your share of the kill was your right, but also your obligation to reciprocate. Speaking of external threats, let's turn our attention to nature's relentless fury and the universal challenges that defined your Paleolithic existence. The pervasive, bone-deep, teeth-chattering cold was a constant adversary, a silent, insidious killer. Winters could be brutally severe, sometimes so fierce that hunting became impossible for weeks. Imagine the biting wind, the deep snows, the frozen ground, conditions that tested the very limits of human endurance. These harsh winters posed an existential threat demanding constant vigilance and meticulous planning for survival against the elements even within the relative shelter of your cave. Every pile of firewood, every carefully stored piece of jerky, every layer of animal hide was a defense against this omnipresent enemy. Good luck finding a warm blanket delivery service in this century. The vast forest, while providing life-sustaining resources, was equally a source of terrifying danger. It was a world teeming with threats, large predators like wolves, cave bears or saber-toothed cats, venomous snakes lurking in the undergrowth, treacherous rivers that could swell with sudden rains, sheer cliff edges that could lead to a fatal fall, and sudden violent storms that could unleash their fury with little warning. Every step outside the cave was fraught with inherent risk, presenting 1,000 ways to die if you were not constantly alert. You learned to navigate this landscape with a profound respect. Your senses heightened your awareness, attuned to every rustle, every shadow, every scent that might signal either opportunity or peril. It was a beautiful but unforgiving world, a constant reminder that you were never truly at the top of the food chain. Despite your immense skill, your accumulated knowledge, and your continuous effort, the constant shadow of famine was an ever-present reality. Hunts could fail, gathering yields were often unpredictable, and a bad season could lead to widespread scarcity. The spectre of widespread famine was not an abstract concept. It was a real visceral fear necessitating rigorous resource management, strategic storage, and most importantly, the ability to endure periods of extreme scarcity. The oral traditions, like old Senna's stories of the Great Winter, were not just tales. They were stark reminders of past famines, reinforcing the importance of communal endurance and foresight. You understood that even with the best efforts, hunger was always just around the corner, a grim companion in your journey through life. It was a constant low-grade anxiety that never truly left you. Disease and injury were constant threats made all the more terrifying by the complete lack of modern medical intervention. Simple infections, easily curable by modern antibiotics, were frequently fatal. A cut finger could fester and lead to a limb-threatening infection, turning a minor inconvenience into a life-or-death drama with no convenient pharmacy in sight. Childbirth, even under the care of experienced elders, was a perilous journey, often ending in tragedy for mother, child, or both. Serious injuries, a broken bone from a fall, a deep gash from a hunting accident, often meant inevitable death, as there was simply no way to mend severe trauma or prevent infection effectively. Despite the development of startlingly sophisticated knowledge of medicinal plants, life expectancy was much shorter than in the modern world, underscoring the profound fragility of human existence. every day you survived was a quiet victory against immense odds. Accurate weather prediction wasn't merely a convenience for planning your day, it was a critical survival skill relying entirely on reading dozens of subtle environmental cues. There were no forecasts on the radio or apps on your phone. Instead, you learned to interpret cloud formations, noting their colour shape and movement. You sensed shifts in wind direction and temperature, understanding what they portended. You observed animal behaviour, the sudden quietness of birds, the hurried scampering of small mammals seeking shelter. You felt the subtle atmospheric changes, a prickle on your skin, a particular scent in the air that spoke of impending rain or snow. Misinterpreting these signs could lead to being caught unprotected in deadly conditions miles from the safety of the cave, where your life depends on being outside in whatever nature decides to throw at you. It was a constant high-stakes meteorological game played with your very existence, and the stakes were always life or death. The explicit understanding that night belongs to the predators highlighted your increased vulnerability and the profound danger that lurked outside the cave after dark. As the sun dipped below the horizon, cloaking the world in darkness, the sounds of the forest would shift. The quiet rustle of foraging animals would be replaced by the more menacing calls of nocturnal hunters. This natural order reinforced the communal fire's role as a vital sanctuary, a flickering barrier between human safety and the wild's unforgiving maw. Wild animals, even magnificent ones like elk or deer, were seen not just as food, but as potentially dangerous if they feel threatened, demanding constant alertness and a deep respect for their power. Your world was a delicate balance of predator and prey, and at night you were often the latter. The fire was your only nightlight. In a world devoid of formal relief efforts, of organised rescue missions or medical aid beyond your band, being alone in this world is basically a death sentence. This wasn't hyperbole, it was a stark, undeniable truth. Predators would find you, accidents would go untended. The inability to independently acquire food or help meant that individual survival hinged entirely on the immediate support and protection of your band. To be separated, to be lost, was to face almost certain death. This reality underscored the profound value of community of belonging and the absolute necessity of mutual aid. Your life was woven into the lives of your band members, an intricate tapestry, where each thread was essential. There was no such thing as a lone wolf in your human experience. Beyond these foundational constraints and the daily grind of survival, Paleolithic life was profoundly shaped by an intricate social fabric. This fabric was woven with unspoken rules, shared beliefs and deeply personal connections, creating a rich cultural tapestry that transcended mere physical existence. Your ancestors were not just struggling to survive, they were living, feeling, connecting beings, building a complex society within the brutal simplicity of their world. Daily planning for hunts and gathering was not a formal meeting with agendas and protocols. Instead, it was a casual conversation around the fire. As the flames flickered and cast long shadows, information, strategies and observations were openly shared. The tracks indicate the bison herd is moving towards the eastern plains, Carla might observe. The elderberries are ripe near the Twin Rocks, Kessa would add. Everyone contributed, everyone listened. Through this direct, transparent and collaborative communication, the band would reach a collective consensus deciding the best course of action for the day. This emphasis on shared dialogue, on valuing every experienced voice, was vital for group cohesion and successful outcomes in a world where mistakes could be fatal. It was democracy by necessity, forged in the flickering light of the communal hearth, far more efficient than any modern committee meeting. In a world of constant potential danger where a misplaced footfall or a sudden rustle could mean the difference between life and death, communication often relied heavily on subtle nonverbal signals. Imagine moving through dense forest tracking game when an experienced hunter like Denny makes a subtle hand gesture. her palm flat fingers pressed together pointing downwards, then a swift motion of her arm in a semicircle. You immediately understand, gather closer, stay quiet, be ready to run. There's no need for words, the message is instantly understood and obeyed, demonstrating the profound importance of unspoken understanding and deep trust within the band. These silent cues were a language unto themselves, honed over generations, a testament to the acute observational skills and collective intelligence of your people. Your survival often depended on these swift, silent communications, where a glance was worth 1,000 words and often much safer. Evenings around the fire were filled with storytelling, a cherished ritual that reinforced social bonds and transmitted vital information. Hunting tales, for instance, didn't unfold as monologues from a single individual. Instead, they were shared in a casual, collaborative way. Yorick might start describing the stalk, the tension of the approach. Then another hunter might interject, adding a detail about the wind shift that almost gave them away, or correcting a minor point about the terrain. Someone else might emphasize a particularly skillful moment, a perfect throw, or a daring maneuver. This collective narrative reinforced shared experiences, valorized courage and skill, and subtly embedded practical hunting tactics for younger generations. It was more than entertainment, it was communal identity being forged, emotional bonds deepening through collective memory and shared narrative. It was your nightly news, your epic poetry, and your history lesson all in one. The power of oral tradition was immense, the very backbone of knowledge transmission. Knowledge from practical survival skills to the historical events that shaped your band and the moral lessons that guided your behavior was preserved and transmitted entirely through oral traditions. Old Senna's familiar stories like the Great Winter were powerful cultural anchors. As you listened around the flickering fire, her narrative subtly transmitted practical survival information, lessons in resource management strategies for preparation against hard times and the importance of resilience, all woven into engaging stories. These narratives forged a deep, undeniable connection to your past, to the triumphs and struggles of those who came before you, ensuring that their hard-won wisdom would never be lost. It was history entertainment and a survival guide all rolled into one comforting voice, far more engaging than any documentary. As the day's urgency subsided and the fire settled into a gentle glow, evening conversations would become quieter, more intimate. Physical proximity naturally increased. Children would lean against parents, their small bodies warmed by the larger forms. Adults would sit shoulder to shoulder, a casual touching that reinforces social bonds and deepens personal connections within the close-knit family and band. These weren't grand declarations of affection, but the subtle, constant affirmations of belonging, of shared space and shared breath. In a world where privacy was non-existent, intimacy was found in this quiet closeness, in the shared warmth and the gentle murmurs that filled the cave as the outside world dissolved into darkness. You might reflect that privacy was simply the absence of the other's immediate body heat. Moments of intense focus, listening for threats in the forest, meticulously working on tools, or simply resting by the fire, were often punctuated by periods of profound shared silence. This collective quiet was not an absence of communication. It was a heightened state of collective awareness, understanding, and trust. You learned to interpret the nuances of silence, the alert stillness that signaled danger, the comfortable quiet of contented rest, the focused hush of deep concentration. In these moments, subtle sounds and movements, a shift in someone's gaze, a slight tensing of muscles conveyed critical information without a single word being spoken. It was a language deeper than sound, a testament to the profound connection between members of your band. It was a quiet understanding that modern society with all its noise had surely forgotten. Simple, non-verbal cues served as vital forms of emotional affirmation and connection, fostering a profound sense of belonging and mutual appreciation within the band. Brun's quiet nod of approval, After you expertly finished carving a tool, Denny's relieved grin after a close encounter with a territorial wild boar, the way an elder might ruffle a child's hair in greeting. These were not insignificant gestures. They were the daily currency of social interaction, small but powerful reinforcements of your place, your value, and your shared humanity. In a world devoid of written praise or formal awards, these subtle acknowledgements were deeply meaningful, strengthening the emotional ties that bound you together as a family and as a collective. It was the original like button, but far more meaningful. Moving beyond mere communication, the cultural disciplines of Paleolithic life were often expressed as performances demanding skill and embodying the very essence of your existence. Take, for instance, the painstaking process of shaping stone tools or knapping. This was a lifelong discipline requiring years of practice to master the art and science of stone fracture and precise strikes. It wasn't just about utility. It was a performance of skill, an almost meditative dance between human intent and the inherent properties of the stone. The rhythmic chip, chip, chip was not merely a sound of work. It was the soundtrack of Paleolithic life, a constant reminder of the expertise required to create the very instruments of your survival. You'd watch the masters, their hands moving with incredible precision, understanding that this was a cultural legacy, a discipline passed down from time immemorial. It was engineering and art long before either had a name. Jorik's focused carving of a spear thrower from antler was another demonstration of advanced technological artistry. This seemingly simple lever device designed to extend the arm and dramatically increase the power and range of a thrown spear embodied thousands of years of technological development. Its complex physics, the precise balance required the ergonomic grip. All were learned and perfected through generations of meticulous trial and error. To watch Jorik work his brow, furrowed in concentration, his antler tools shaping the bone with exquisite care, was to witness a cultural performance of ingenuity and craftsmanship. It was a testament to the human capacity for innovation, translating abstract principles into life-saving technology. It was effectively a very ancient, very effective weapon upgrade. Kessa's rhythmic grinding of wild grass seeds between stones was a fundamental, labour-intensive cultural discipline, a sound that might well be called the oldest industrial noise in human history. Imagine the steady, almost hypnotic scrape and thump as she painstakingly transformed raw hard seeds into coarse flour. This was a performative act of transforming nature's bounty into sustenance demanding patience, physical strength, and a deep understanding of food processing. It was a discipline that unlocked vital nutrition, making otherwise indigestible plants a crucial part of your diet. The repetition, the focus, the physical effort, all were part of a cultural ritual of provisioning a daily affirmation of humanity's ability to extract and prepare its food. It was in its own way a very early form of sustainable agriculture requiring only muscle and knowledge. The skilled work of repairing clothing with bone needles and sinew thread, often in the dim light of the cave or by the fire, reflected a profound cultural value placed on meticulous maintenance and the preservation of labour-intensive items. Each garment, a tunic or a cloak, represented hundreds of hours of labour, from hunting the animal to tanning the hide to cutting and sewing. This made its care a continuous and vital discipline. A tear wasn't just a tear, it was a potential breach in your defence against the elements, a waste of precious resources. So the act of mending became a careful, precise performance, ensuring the longevity of your invaluable clothing, a quiet but essential act of cultural preservation. A lost button, you'd realise, was probably a minor tragedy, not a quick trip to the haberdashery. Toma's incredibly skilled and dangerous ascent of an old oak tree for wild honey was a breathtaking performance of physical prowess. You'd watch him, heart in your throat, as he moved with a confident, almost rock-climber-like grace, his bare feet finding purchase on the rough bark, his body a study in balance and strength. These movements, honed since childhood, were a direct expression of a culture that not only demanded but celebrated such physical excellence for collective gain. It wasn't just about getting the honey, it was about the daring, the skill, the willingness to risk for the benefit of all. His climb was a narrative in itself, a silent story of courage and honed ability, a cultural spectacle that reinforced the value of physical mastery in your challenging world. He was the local superstar, and his stage was the tallest tree. Beyond these tangible displays of skill storytelling and oral tradition, constituted an equally vital cultural performance. Hunting stories, as you've seen, told collaboratively around the fire, were more than just entertainment. They were cultural performances reinforcing shared experiences, valorizing courage and skill, and embedding practical hunting tactics for younger generations. Each contribution, each embellishment, each subtle correction served to deepen the narrative and reinforce its lessons. You learned not just from direct experience, but from the vivid recounting of others' experiences, making their triumphs and near misses part of your collective consciousness. Elders like Old Senna, as living libraries and teachers, understood the profound power of their narratives. Her stories, like The Great Winter, were powerful cultural performances. As an elder, her narratives served as both cherished entertainment, captivating listeners around the flickering fire, and critical education. They transmitted complex life-saving information on resource management and resilience, across generations, solidifying her revered status. Her voice, often quiet but firm, would conjure images of past hardship and triumph, embedding vital lessons into the hearts and minds of her listeners. This was the ultimate teaching method, blending wisdom with artistry, ensuring the continuity of your people. It was history entertainment and a survival guide, all rolled into one comforting voice, far more engaging than any documentary. Practical instruction itself was a performance. Denny instructing younger women on the identification and preparation of medicinal plants, or Brune patiently teaching children the intricate skill of cordage making, were direct hands-on performances. These demonstrations, accompanied by detailed oral instruction, ensured that critical knowledge was accurately transferred and internalized. You would not simply hear about how to do something. You would see it, feel it, practice it, and then perform it yourself. This active, immersive learning experience was how the next generation of skilled survivors was forged, a constant relay race of knowledge passed from one set of hands to the next. The entire cultural system of knowledge transmission relied on human memory and the ancient art of storytelling. The ability to memorize and recall hundreds of plants, animal behaviors, complex social relationships, and then articulate them effectively was a highly valued cognitive and cultural performance. Those with exceptional memories were revered, their minds a living archive of the band's accumulated wisdom. This wasn't just about reciting facts, it was about weaving those facts into a coherent, meaningful narrative that could be understood and applied. This ability was a key to social influence, a form of intellectual contribution that was just as vital as physical prowess. Your brain in this era was truly your most powerful tool, a supercomputer of survival facts far more important than any stone tablet could ever be. Your caves were not just shelters. They were canvases, whispering galleries where cave art served as a profound form of cultural expression and communication. These paintings, of animals, of abstract symbols, of the occasional handprint, were not mere decoration. Oh no, they served crucial cultural functions deeply embedded in the very fabric of your survival and spiritual life. Some depicted hunting scenes, detailed and vivid, serving as visual aids for teaching younger hunters about animal anatomy, movement, and critical weak points. Others mark significant events or celebrations, a visual chronicle of a particularly successful hunt or a bountiful harvest. And still others connected to deep spiritual beliefs about the relationship between humans and animals, an intricate cosmology rendered in pigment and stone, blurring the lines between the mundane and the sacred. It was art with a purpose, not just something to hang over the couch. The creation of these paintings was itself a highly skilled cultural endeavour, a meticulous process passed down through generations. Pigments were carefully sourced from nature red and yellow ochre, from mineral deposits rich black from charcoal, or manganese white from various clays. These raw materials were then meticulously ground, often with stone mortars and pestles, and mixed with binding agents, perhaps animal fat blood or plant sap, to create durable paints. Artists employed surprisingly sophisticated techniques, from blowing pigment over a hand pressed to the wall to create striking stencils, to painting detailed animal figures with rudimentary brushes made from plant fibres or animal hair, and even engraving lines into the rock before applying colour. It was a fusion of chemistry, artistry and geological knowledge, all for the purpose of visual storytelling. Your cave walls were the world's first art galleries and also its first classrooms. The placement of many of these paintings, you'd notice, was not arbitrary. They were often located in areas within the caves with special acoustic properties. Imagine gathering for a ceremony, the air thick with a scent of smoke and anticipation. The combination of visual art, acoustic effects and musical performance, perhaps rhythmic drumming on hides or haunting vocalizations echoing through the natural chambers, created immersive experiences. In these moments, you'd feel a deep, almost primal connection to your cultural traditions and spiritual beliefs, a profound sense of unity with your band and the ancient world. The cave itself became a living temple, a stage for the convergence of art, sound and spirit, designed to transport you beyond the everyday. It was sensory immersion thousands of years before virtual reality. And there they were, your painted ancestors watching from the cave walls. These images, often stylized or symbolic, served as a constant, tangible reminder of the band's continuity, its long, unbroken history in this very cave. They fostered a profound sense of belonging, a feeling that you were part of a continuous chain of human survival and cultural transmission, linking your present moment with a vast enduring past and an imagined future. These ancestral presences were not just art. They were guardians, witnesses, and silent teachers embedding in your consciousness a deep reverence for those who came before and an awareness of your own place in the grand narrative of your people. They were in a very real sense your earliest family album. Your spiritual frameworks were deeply integrated with the natural environment. The Paleolithic worldview saw the world as a living thing, simultaneously beautiful and terrifying, generous and ruthless. Elements of nature, the sun, the moon, specific animals, powerful rivers, ancient trees, were often imbued with profound spiritual significance guiding your actions and interpretations. There was no clear division between the physical and the spiritual. Everything was interconnected, imbued with a subtle life force that you respected and at times feared. Your survival depended on understanding and respecting this spiritual landscape, not just its physical realities. You consulted the land not just for food, but for guidance. Encounters with animals were frequently interpreted as signs or messages from the natural or spiritual realm. For instance, safely seeing a herd of majestic elk grazing peacefully near your hunting grounds was often considered a positive omen. You'd associate them with strength and endurance, seeing their powerful forms and graceful movements as a blessing from the forest spirits. Such an encounter could boost morale, instill a sense of cosmic alignment, and influence the band's hunting strategies for the day. Conversely, the sudden appearance of a territorial cave bear might be interpreted as a warning, urging caution, or a change in plans. This constant seeking of meaning in the animal world highlighted your profound spiritual connection to the creatures that shared your world, seeing them as more than just food or threat, but as messengers from the unseen. It was a form of daily prophecy written in paw prints and flight patterns. The cave paintings, with their depictions of animals and those powerful symbolic handprints, also represented a potent connection to previous generations and implicitly their spirits. The painted ancestors watching from the cave walls were not just figures. They fostered a profound sense of spiritual guardianship and continuity for the living. You felt their presence a silent audience to your daily struggles and triumphs, a reminder that you were part of a long lineage. This connection provided comfort, a sense of not being alone in your vast, challenging world, and reinforced the spiritual bond between past, present, and future generations. Their watchful eyes were a silent testament to the enduring spirit of your people, a constant reminder that you were never truly alone. While not explicitly religious in a modern formalized sense, the fire itself held immense symbolic and spiritual power. It was understood as life protection and the difference between human and animal. Around this flickering core, human culture, spirit, and survival coalesced each day and night. The fire symbolized warmth in the cold light, in the darkness, safety from predators, and the very act of cooking that made food digestible and preserved. It was the sacred communal center, the beating heart of your home, and its meticulous nurturing was as much a spiritual act as a practical one. It was the place where stories were told, decisions made, and fears banished by its comforting glow. You spent your days seeking sustenance and your nights protecting this precious dancing heart of your existence. The constant reality of a much shorter life expectancy than in the modern world and the omnipresence of death fostered a deep pragmatic spiritual acceptance of nature's relentless cycles. Death wasn't hidden away. It was an undeniable part of life woven into the fabric of your daily existence. The meticulous utilization of every single part of a hunted animal from marrow to sinew hinted at a spiritual reciprocity with the natural world, honouring the life that had been taken by ensuring nothing was wasted. This wasn't a morbid obsession. It was a profound understanding that all life eventually returns to the earth, feeding new life, a continuous sacred cycle. You watched the leaves fall, the animals die, and you knew your own place in that grand, beautiful, and terrifying design. Sleep in your Paleolithic existence brought dreams filled with the real experiences of the day. Tracking animals through the forest, gathering plants, the feel of stone tools in your hands, the warmth of the fire. These dreams were rooted in direct experience of the physical world, suggesting a profound spiritual connection to your immediate reality, uncluttered by abstract modern worries or digital distractions. Your subconscious mind continued to process the challenges and triumphs of your waking hours, perhaps working out solutions to problems or simply replaying the vivid sensory tapestry of your day. It was a kind of spiritual processing, a deep engagement with the raw, unvarnished truth of your life with no need for a therapist to interpret them. At the absolute core of your Paleolithic social life was the centrality of the family cluster. This wasn't just a preference for companionship, it was an essential survival strategy. Family groups, your mate, your children, your parents, your siblings, your cousins, clustered intimately around the central fire pit, finding warmth, safety, and mutual support in constant proximity. Imagine the constant gentle contact, the shared breaths, the unspoken understanding that arose from this profound closeness. This wasn't merely social bonding, it was the fundamental unit of resilience against a harsh, unforgiving world. Your family was your first line of defense, your primary source of comfort, and the reason for much of your daily toil. There was no family separation here. You were always together for better or worse, mostly for survival. While not explicitly detailed in the outline, the harsh realities of Paleolithic life strongly implied that partnerships, what you might call marriage, were pragmatic alliances. Forget the romantic comedies of the modern era. Your relationships were primarily focused on mutual survival, efficient resource acquisition, and most importantly, the successful raising of children who would one day contribute to the band. Romantic love as a sole driver for forming a pair bond would likely have been secondary to these communal imperatives. Love was certainly present, a deep abiding affection forged in shared hardship and profound interdependence, but it was a love deeply integrated with the practical demands of existence, a love that understood its purpose within the larger survival of the band. It was less about butterflies and more about, can we survive winter together? Mothers, as you've observed, played an indispensable role, multitasking with an efficiency that would exhaust a modern person. Nursing infants while simultaneously preparing for daily tasks, checking tools or processing plants was not unusual. Pregnant and nursing mothers received special consideration and extra nutrition, a clear indication of the community's profound pragmatic investment in successful reproduction and the health of the next generation. This wasn't just about individual care. It was about the survival of the lineage, the perpetuation of the band. Every healthy birth was a victory, every nurtured child a promise of future strength and continuity. You can imagine that having it all had a very different meaning in this era. Child rearing, too, was a profoundly communal endeavour. Children were never isolated. They were kept within the safety of the group, learning by constantly observing and gradually participating in adult activities. The sight of sleeping children always brings a sense of satisfaction to the adults, a deep, almost spiritual fulfillment. It reflected the collective pride and profound responsibility in ensuring their future and watching the seeds of the next generation slowly unfurl. Children were not just individuals, they were the collective future, and every adult understood their role in protecting and educating these vital, vulnerable members of the band. Your babysitters were literally the entire community. Cultural norms in your Paleolithic society would likely have suppressed purely individualistic romantic ideals in favour of relationships that strengthened the band. There was no room for self-indulgent whims when the collective survival was at stake. Emotional bonds were forged through profound shared hardship, mutual dependence, and the collective purpose of survival. This made love a deeply integrated practical force, a quiet strength that underpinned the daily grind rather than a fleeting passionate emotion. Your connection to your mate was a partnership, a profound commitment to face the world together for yourselves and for the future of your children. Individual passion was a luxury. Collective survival was the absolute priority. The gravity of transgression in your world was always survival-based. While specific transgressions like adultery were not detailed in the outline, any action that jeopardized the family unit's ability to contribute or compromised its safety, recklessness, waste of precious resources, negligence, would carry severe survival-based consequences within the close-knit social structure. This could potentially lead to ostracization, a fate that, as you know, was almost a death sentence. There were no written laws, but the consequences were clear, understood by all, and directly tied to the fundamental imperative of collective survival. Your community enforced its rules not through jails, but through the very real threat of isolation and its dire consequences. You didn't just break a rule, you broke the chain of survival. Physical contact, particularly in the evenings, played a crucial role in reinforcing the bonds of family and band. As the urgent tasks of the day receded, children would naturally lean against their parents seeking warmth and comfort. Adults would sit shoulder to shoulder, creating casual touching that reinforces social bonds. These were not grand gestures, but the subtle, constant affirmations of connection, a hand on a shoulder, the press of a thigh against another, the warmth of shared body heat. This non-verbal communication strengthened emotional ties and fostered a deep sense of belonging within the family and the wider band. It was a language of comfort, security, and shared humanity, a powerful antidote to the harshness of the outside world, knitting you all into an unbreakable whole. You might reflect that privacy was simply the absence of others' immediate body heat. Now let's reflect on the profound weight of clan identity, often articulated as ici in some ancient cultures, though here it applies to your band. The concept of the band Your extended family or clan was paramount, overriding individual desires, preferences, or ambitions. Your individual identity was deeply intertwined with and often subsumed by the collective. You were not John or Jane in isolation. You were John of the River Cave Band, or Jane, daughter of Old Senna, a definition inextricably linked to your group. Your actions were primarily weighed by their immediate and long-term impact on the band's survival and well-being. There was no room for self-indulgence when the very existence of your people hung in the balance. One's reputation and standing were entirely derived from their demonstrable skills and contributions within the band. There were no inherited titles or superficial measures of worth. Your expertise in tracking your ability to identify edible plants, your skill as a climber or your prowess as a hunter, conferred immense respect and solidified your irreplaceable place within the collective identity. If you were a master toolmaker, your hands and knowledge were celebrated. If you were a skilled healer, your wisdom was constantly sought. This meritocracy of skill meant that your worth was constantly proven, constantly affirmed by your tangible contributions to the group's ongoing survival. Your identity was your utility or value to the collective. Your resume, you could say, was literally how many times you kept everyone alive. The long continuous history of your band, ancestors walking the same paths descendants expected to follow, meant that individual actions had profound generational ripple effects. Preserving knowledge, securing resources, and ensuring the group's survival was understood as a sacred duty not just to your living kin but to both past and future lineages. You were a link in an unbroken chain, a custodian of an ancient legacy. To act carelessly, to waste resources, or to fail in transmitting vital knowledge was to betray not just the present, but all those who had come before and all who would come after. This deep sense of historical continuity instilled a profound responsibility, a constant awareness that your actions echoed through time. You were not just living for yourself, you were living for all who would come after. While scandal, in a feudal sense, was absent, any failure to contribute a debilitating injury that made you a burden, or actions that endangered the band, e.g., carelessness leading to loss of resources, or life would severely impact your standing and the group's ability to thrive. There were no courtly intrigues, but the consequences were starkly practical. Dying means your family doesn't eat, a simple, brutal truth directly linked individual failure to collective harm. This was not about honor codes. It was about the cold, hard calculus of survival. You learned quickly that the band could not afford passengers. Everyone had to pull their weight, or the consequences would be dire for all. Unwavering cooperation was the ultimate expression of your clan identity. The successful hunt, the communal gathering, the shared firekeeping, the collective defense against threats, all underscored that survival was at its very core a group endeavor. Your individual strength, your personal skills were amplified exponentially when combined with the cooperation of your band. There was no true protection in isolation, only vulnerability. This collective ethic meant that every decision, every action, was viewed through the lens of how it contributed to the group's harmonious functioning and overall resilience. It wasn't just a choice, it was the defining ethic, the fundamental operating system of your Paleolithic world. You could say that teamwork makes the dream work, especially when the dream is not starving. There was a profound, almost spiritual, ingrained sense of belonging to the band, often articulated not in grand speeches, but in the quiet, comforting thought, "This is your world, this is your family, this is home." There was no concept of external communities to aspire to, no alternative allegiances to consider. The band constituted the entirety of one's social world and purpose. To be of the band was to be fully human, fully alive. To be outside, it was to be nothing a ghost in the wilderness. This deep sense of belonging provided immense psychological security, a constant anchor in a world of unpredictability. It was your entire social network and your only one. From the critical task of fire watch to the meticulous preservation of resources, responsibilities were widely shared. While leaders like Brun guided with wisdom, every member had a direct, undeniable role in maintaining the strength and continuity of the clan. This distributed responsibility ensured its resilience in a challenging world. It meant that if one person fell ill or was injured, others could step in minimizing the impact on the collective. This was not a burden. It was a privilege, a shared commitment to the enduring spirit of your people. Your life was bound to theirs and their life to yours in a dance of mutual obligation and survival. Within this intricate social fabric, mechanisms of power and control, though informal, were critically important. They elicited powerful human responses in the face of survival. Formal, unyielding power hierarchies like shoguns or daimyo with their rigid castles and strict protocols were completely absent from your world. Instead, leadership like Brun's was informal. It was earned through profound experience, consistently demonstrated wisdom, and the proven ability to make decisions that consistently benefited the entire group. This was a form of meritocratic influence, a quiet authority based on trust and demonstrated competence, rather than coercive power or inherited status. Brun didn't command. He guided, and his guidance was followed because it was consistently wise. Elders like Old Senna held significant informal authority derived from their vast irreplaceable knowledge and their long years of life experience. Their counsel was sought, their opinions valued, their approval, perhaps a nod to signal that a meal could begin, or a quiet word affirming a decision, carried significant weight, representing a respected position based on a crude wisdom crucial for the band's continuity. They were the living archives, the steady hand of tradition, whose guidance was indispensable in navigating the complexities of your world. Their authority wasn't imposed, it was freely given by a community that understood the profound value of lived history. Individuals with highly specialized and essential skills naturally exerted influence in their respective domains. Kala the Tracker, for instance, would be deferred to when discussing animal movements or pathways through the forest. Toma the Climber would have the final say on the safety of a tree for honey. Rana the Cook would guide the process of preparing a complex meal. Their expertise was respected not through strict command, but through the universal recognition of their vital, irreplaceable contribution to collective survival. This was a functional hierarchy where influence flowed from demonstrable competence, ensuring that the right person with the right knowledge was always heard in critical situations. You might argue about the best berry patch later, but a charging boar tended to shorten philosophical debates considerably. Essential tasks such as the crucial fire watch were considered critical skills and one of the most important responsibilities, and were rotated among the adults. This demonstrated a distributed system of authority and accountability for vital functions rather than a concentrated power structure. It meant that every adult was trained, every adult was capable, and every adult understood the immense responsibility of keeping the heart of the home alive. This shared burden of responsibility was a testament to the band's collaborative nature, ensuring that no single point of failure could jeopardize the entire group. You understood that even the quietest moments of your life were governed by this intricate, decentralized system of mutual reliance. Crucial daily decisions regarding hunting routes or gathering areas were, as you know, not dictated by a single individual. Instead, they emerged from casual conversation around the fire, a process of collective deliberation. Experienced individuals contributed their insights, observations, and hunches. The winds are shifting, the game might be moving towards the sheltered valley, someone might suggest. I saw signs of plentiful mushrooms near the old river bend, another would add. The group would collectively weigh these factors, discussing the risks and potential rewards, and then determine the best course of action. This fostered a profound sense of shared governance, where collective wisdom trumped individual decree, ensuring broad buy-in and optimized outcomes in life or death situations. It was a democracy of survival, pure and unvarnished, with far higher stakes than any modern election. While not formal obedience to a ruler or a written law, there was an implicit immediate understanding that all actions must align with survival imperatives. This was a deeper kind of obedience, an instinctual alignment with the needs of the collective. When Denny, the experienced hunter, signaled danger, a subtle hand gesture, a sudden tensing of her body, everyone freezes and consolidates, silently moving together for safety. This demonstrated an instinctual cohesive response to recognized authority in moments of crisis, a survival reflex honed over countless millennia. It wasn't about bowing to a superior. It was about the immediate, unquestioning trust that in moments of peril, the experienced few knew best and your life depended on following their silent lead. Your Paleolithic band operated entirely without a formal justice system, written laws, or public punishments in the modern sense. There were no courts, no judges, no prisons. Instead, rules were implicit, deeply ingrained within the culture, and fundamentally centered on behaviors that ensured the band's immediate survival and long-term cohesion. You learn these rules by observation, by subtle corrections, and by understanding their direct consequences. This wasn't a society of abstract legal codes. It was a society of practical lived ethics where the highest law was the continuation of the group. Although not formalized as a Gonin-Gumi system, an Edo period Japanese system of 5 family units with collective responsibility, the principle of collective responsibility was absolutely paramount. Individual actions had immediate tangible consequences for the entire group. Getting lost means dying, and dying means your family doesn't eat, a stark illustration of this interconnectedness. If one member was reckless, if one failed to contribute, the entire band suffered the repercussions. This shared fate served as a powerful, ever-present social regulator, a constant reminder that your individual choices rippled through the lives of everyone around you. It was a system built on profound mutual accountability, where self-interest was inextricably linked to the well-being of the collective. You didn't just break a rule, you broke the chain of survival. Deviations from expected pro-survival behavior, selfishness with resources, carelessness that led to danger or a consistent lack of contribution would likely be met with strong informal social pressure. You wouldn't face a trial, but you'd feel the weight of communal disapproval, the quiet exclusion from conversations, the subtle coldness from your kin. In extreme cases, this could escalate to ostracization, a fate almost as grim as death itself, for who could survive alone in this world. The band simply could not afford unproductive or destructive members in its harsh environment. This informal social pressure, the constant judgment of your peers, was a potent form of social control ensuring that individual behavior aligned with collective survival. The most direct and potent form of enforcement came not from human decree but from natural consequences. Failing to maintain your tools, neglecting your turn on firewatch, or misidentifying poisonous plants had immediate, often severe practical repercussions for you and the entire group. A dull spear point meant a missed hunt and hunger for all. A fire left untended meant freezing and vulnerability to predators. A poisonous berry meant illness or death. These natural consequences acted as a powerful and unforgiving deterrent, teaching lessons that were never forgotten, etching themselves deep into the collective memory of the band. Your world had no prisons, but it had immediate, undeniable feedback loops that enforced its rules with brutal efficiency. The profound mutual dependence for daily survival meant that maintaining strong social bonds and contributing to the group's welfare was inherently self-regulating. Every individual had a deeply vested interest in the success and stability of the collective. If the band thrived, you thrived. If the band suffered, you suffered. This made social harmony and cooperation not just desirable, but a fundamental survival imperative. It was a symbiotic relationship where the well-being of one was directly tied to the well-being of all. You contributed because it ensured your own future, and you supported others because their strength added to yours. It was the original pay-it-forward system with life itself as the currency. Mortality in your Paleolithic existence was not a distant abstraction, but a constant threat, a pervasive reality that shaped every decision and underscored the profound urgency of daily tasks and communal efforts. Death emanated from every corner of your world, predators lurking in the shadows, venomous animals, poisonous plants mistakenly consumed accidents on hunts, or during gathering the gnawing hunger of famine, the silent spread of disease, and the relentless fury of the elements. This pervasive reality cultivated a unique perspective on life. Every sunrise was a quiet triumph, every sunset a moment of gratitude for another day survived. While not a ritualized calm acceptance of fate like seppuku in later Japanese culture, the daily confrontation with mortality fostered a deep pragmatic understanding of human vulnerability and the limits of individual control. You couldn't control the weather, the movements of great beasts, or the sudden onset of illness, but you could control your efforts, your vigilance, your cooperation. Survival itself was the highest form of resilience celebrated with each new dawn, a testament to the enduring human spirit in the face of overwhelming odds. You understood that life was fleeting, but your efforts for the band were eternal, a tiny flicker against an immense darkness. The band's tireless efforts were fundamentally focused on preserving life, the life of every member, especially the children who represented the future. The meticulous care for the vulnerable, the equitable sharing of resources, and the diligent transmission of life-saving knowledge all underscored that individual life as part of the collective was intensely valued. Your community wasn't about heroic individual deaths. It was about the quiet heroism of everyday survival, the collective will to continue existing. Every effort, every sacrifice was ultimately in service of preserving the flame of life for your people. The understanding that humans mourned their dead implied a profound cultural recognition of loss and the importance of remembering those who had passed. While the exact rituals might be unknown, this act of memory contributed to the continuous chain of human survival, linking the living with their ancestors and reinforcing the preciousness of life. You didn't just forget those who are gone. Their stories, their contributions, their very essence became part of the oral tradition, part of the painted legacy on the cave walls, ensuring that their spirit lived on within the collective memory of the band. It was a somber but vital aspect of your humanity, acknowledging the fragility of life while affirming the enduring power of connection. There was no explicit concept of honour in the feudal sense where death might be chosen to uphold an abstract code. Instead, honour in your Paleolithic world was implicitly tied to one's contribution skill and unwavering loyalty to the band. These were the qualities that directly ensured collective survival and protected the future of your lineage. A skilled hunter who consistently brought back game, a wise elder who guided the band through a harsh winter, a diligent gatherer who knew every edible plant. These were the individuals of true honour. Your worth was measured not by a title, but by your practical value to the community, by your ability to contribute to the collective will to live. It was less about reputation and more about proven utility. Your body, strong, lean and efficient, was honed by constant physical activity. Endless walking, lifting, digging, running. Your mind, calm but alert, was perpetually processing environmental information, always scanning for utility or danger. These physical and mental virtues were not just admired, they were essential attributes for actively countering the omnipresent threats of mortality. Your body was your primary tool for survival, and you instinctively kept it in peak condition, not for aesthetic reasons, but because it was quite literally your best defense against a world that offered 1,000 ways to die. Your strength was your resilience, your alertness, your shield, and your fitness tracker was simply the threat of becoming someone else's dinner. Suffering in your world arose primarily from nature's caprices, harsh winters that froze the very marrow in your bones, famines that hollowed out your stomach, unexpected animal encounters that could turn deadly in an instant, and environmental disasters like floods or rock slides. There were no excessive taxes levied by distant lords or corrupt officials, demanding tribute as sources of human suffering. Your struggle was direct and unmediated against the relentless indifferent forces of the natural world. This clarity of adversity, though brutal, meant that your efforts were always directed at a tangible, understandable foe, nature itself. You couldn't blame the government for a bad harvest, only the skies. Instead of peasant rebellion against an oppressive human hierarchy, your fundamental response to scarcity was collective resilience and foresight. The oral traditions, like old Senna's story of the Great Winter, taught your people how to survive. It spoke of utilizing cached supplies and gathered materials that had been stored in hidden locations, emphasizing strategic planning and communal endurance. When food became scarce, you didn't riot. You tightened your belts, drew upon your stored resources, and relied even more heavily on the collective knowledge and shared fortitude of your band. It was a fight against nature, not against each other. The primary response to any threat, whether from predators lurking in the shadows or the environment unleashing its fury, was unwavering cooperation. The adage, "You never go anywhere alone ever," being alone in this world is basically a death sentence, was not merely a piece of advice. It was a fundamental law of your existence. If a gathering party encountered a dangerous animal, the entire band would immediately consolidate, listening intently for further signs and preparing to act collectively, whether to flee to safety or defend itself with coordinated action. This collective strength, this instinctive unity, was your most potent weapon against a world that was constantly testing your resolve. You were an unbreakable unit, your lives intertwined in a dance of mutual protection. The band's thousands of years of human experimentation with natural medicine represented a highly adaptive response to the constant threat of disease and injury. You learned to distinguish hundreds of plants, identifying which ones could alleviate pain, like willow bark tea for aches and fevers, which possessed antibiotic properties, certain types of mushrooms or molds, or which herbs aided in childbirth. This accumulated knowledge passed down through generations was a sophisticated empirical science. It was your way of mitigating suffering through understanding and utilizing the natural world, an ongoing process of discovery and adaptation, rather than through rebellion against an external power. You healed each other quietly, diligently, with the wisdom of the earth. Given the informal, fluid leadership structure based on expertise and consensus, the concept of uprisings or rebellion against a governing power simply did not apply in your Paleolithic world. There was no king to overthrow, no lord to defy. Dissent, if it occurred, would likely be resolved through direct discussion, through quiet persuasion around the fire, or in extreme cases through the fissioning of the band, a group choosing to split off and form its own independent collective. But open rebellion against a coercive authority was a foreign concept, because such authority in its oppressive form simply didn't exist. Your society was too fluid, too dependent on mutual agreement for such rigid conflicts. The concept of the Ronin, the masterless warrior wandering alone, is utterly inapplicable to your Paleolithic existence. The equivalent of profound struggle and social ostracism was quite literally isolation. Being alone in this world is basically a death sentence, due to immediate threats from predators, accidents with no one to help, and the sheer inability to independently find enough food or secure adequate shelter. Your band was your life, your breath, your very being. Without it you were a ghost, an echo destined to quickly fade into the wilderness. While not a systemic problem of a large societal structure, any individual separated from their band faced a dire existential crisis. Their profound struggles, the inability to survive alone and the extreme vulnerability to the elements and predators were a direct consequence of the brutal realities of the Paleolithic. This wasn't a flaw in your society, it was the fundamental truth of your world. Your survival hinged on the collective, and without that collective, your chances were virtually nil. The wilderness was not a place for solo heroes, it was a place for cooperative bands. The band was your sole source of security and identity, providing the fundamental human warmth and safety. Without your band, an individual lacked not only food and protection, but also the communal knowledge necessary to navigate a hostile world. The security of community was paramount. It was the ultimate insurance against death, a living, breathing safety net woven from shared purpose and mutual care. This wasn't just a social preference. It was the absolute, undeniable truth of your existence. You were because your band was, and your band was because you were a part of it. There was no social security number, only your place in the circle around the fire. Strength in numbers was not a theoretical concept. It was a daily practical necessity for both defence and resource acquisition. A gathering party never travelled alone, illustrating the practical imperative of group size. Multiple sets of eyes were better for foraging, spotting more edible plants or signs of danger. A larger group could more effectively surround game, driving it towards waiting hunters. This collective strength was vital for survival, turning individual vulnerabilities into a powerful unified force. The band moved as one, thought as one, survived as one. You wouldn't try to solo a mammoth, would you? There were no discarded warriors in your society, no outcasts or forgotten heroes. Every skilled individual's contribution was vital for daily survival. The outline suggests that individuals who couldn't contribute fully were still cared for by the community, emphasizing profound inclusion and interdependence rather than abandonment. An injured hunter, an ailing elder, a child still too young to forage, all were precious, all were supported. This reflected the deep value of every human life to the collective, a recognition that every person had inherent worth, and that the strength of the band lay in its ability to protect and nurture all its members regardless of their immediate capacity to contribute. In a world where every hand was needed, even a limited contribution was honoured and life was never simply discarded. This was the ultimate expression of your Paleolithic humanity, a testament to the fact that even in the harshest of times, compassion was a cornerstone of survival. As the echoes of the Paleolithic world gently fade, allow your mind to drift back to the quiet comfort of your present space. The bone-deep chill, the ever-present hunger, the constant vigilance against 1,000 dangers, these realities are now but whispers from a time long past. You no longer need to interpret subtle environmental cues for your very survival, nor fear the predators of the night. Your fire is electric, your food readily available, and the soft rustle of your sheets a far cry from the scratchy grass mats of your ancestors. The world you inhabit now, with its soft lights and gentle sounds, is direct inheritance from their tireless efforts, their ingenuity and their unwavering spirit. Reflect for a moment on the profound resilience, the intricate cooperation, and the deep communal bonds that defined life 25,000 years ago. It was a world of stark simplicity, yet rich with purpose, where every day was a testament to the enduring human spirit. Feel the lingering warmth of that ancient fire, the quiet wisdom of the elders, the silent strength of the band, and then let it all gently recede like mist at dawn. As you settle deeper into your own comfort, surrounded by the quiet security of your modern world, allow the soft hum of your surroundings to guide you. The journey back through time is complete. There's nothing left to do now but to release the day, to let your thoughts soften, and to welcome the deep restorative peace that awaits you. May your dreams be as gentle as the first light filtering into a quiet cave, filled not with the challenges of survival, but with tranquil, comforting visions of rest and warmth.